So the topic for the next session is DPI across the globe. Learn about how technology is transforming approaches to solving societal challenges. And the speaker for this session is Mr. Vijay Vujjini, CTO, Center for DPI, Chief Architect, G2P Connect. With a round of applause, I would like to invite Mr. Vijay Vujjini.
Good morning, everyone. So, yeah, we had a very curated session from Pramod and understood a good amount of concepts of DPI and DPG, and this is kind of continuum to that, where we try to demystify between DPI and DPGs. And considering we have builder community here as an ecosystem, I will be more focused towards the builders. But before we get into that, would like to take a step back, and as end users, like Pramod called out, the power of DPI is that we built over the last 15 years as India, as a country. Just want to bring one aspect of it and connect that to how it will help from a DPG ecosystem when we as a community start using that reusable infrastructure. Imagine in 2010, I can very well imagine we have 300 million households in the country. Each of them has an electricity bill to pay, right? And I do distinctly recall that spending at least 30 minutes every month going and paying that bill, standing in the line and then doing that. Even if you take a conservative, optimistic way, 10 minutes per household. And you multiply that by 300 million households, and I was just doing the math, it turns out to be 57 years of productive time being spent on the lines, right? So, as the DPI infrastructure helps us empower what we saw through examples Pramod said, the productivity aspect of it is what is driving the whole economy on these aspects, right. And now let us take the other side of the spectrum. Now, we are all builders here as developer community, and that is where the distinction, like Pramod already called out, the difference between DPI and DPG. In the interest of time, I will not try to get into some of those, repeat them. DPI is the instantiation of the DPGs, like Pramod rightly called out. Now, the Sunbird solutions and the other infrastructure that exists as open source blocks, which enable many of these capabilities for DPI, is what I would like to spend this next 15-20 minutes to try to demystify and try to show you pointers where, as developing ecosystem, we all can leverage and get use of it. So, I am the CTO for Center for DPI, Pramod is co-chair, and this initiative came up little around a year ago, primarily because many of us built these DPIs over the last 15 years in the country, and it did not happen out of thin air. Basically, we were all there inside the system. There was a good invisible hand, like Adam Smith says, that private public partnership was happening quietly while we were creating this infrastructure. And that is what the essence of that simplicity, minimalism, the principles that we believe, we take it for granted now in many of our solutions, because we are all consumers of those infrastructure and we take it for granted as an identity or a payment. But if once you step outside India and look at the global south countries, there is a lot more that can be learned from this experience collectively, and then we can fast track the whole rollout of the infrastructure. And that is where I think the Center for DPI came into existence, wherein we, the builders, the plumbers who have done that, want to collectively document and then start sharing our experiences out to the countries, and basically try to bring that inclusion, innovation and competition in nation growth, just like the ecosystem that thousands of startups in each of these building blocks have emerged. Again, DPI, this is our official quote unquote principle, a definition of a DPI, where it is a collection of building blocks, DPGs coming together to instantiate a solution, right. And it is not just the technology, technology is just a part of the whole DPI, and much of it is the process or the policies and then the mindset that has to come together to instantiate DPI is what becomes more important. And again, this collective experience and knowledge, where we would like to take it to the countries, and I think there was one question earlier how this can be leveraged in other countries as well. So, the core principles are basically to get the right balance between the market, the governance and the technology. Technology is just a small part, and that is where the DPGs come into play, but majority of it has to using the right principles, architectural design principles to enable that innovation for market play to take it forward. That is the core essence of DPI. And we try to synthesize, and this is where we are trying to demystify the DPI and versus DPG. For us, DPI, based on the collective experience that has happened in last 15 years, trying to categorize these areas where the DPIs come handy. From collective experience, this is where we figured out that identity, payment, data, discovery and fulfillment for transactions, and finally the trust layer, which has to be the foundation bedrock of all of these to sustain, is how we try to layer it and try to simplify the complex landscape of DPI into these 5 categories. And any solution that you see or you connect today, either in the exhibition, the expo that is out there, and you in your day to day life, you can easily map them to one of these verticals as a solution. These are the building blocks that from a DPG, digital public goods point of view, one could like to leverage and reuse to build solutions on top of this, the platforms, and to enable that. Countries, policymakers will help in creating the infrastructure, the landscape, the environment for you all to build, and the solutions will come from by stitching these open source solutions handily, so that you do not have to reinvent many of it, so that the time to market, the fastness at low cost is possible by bringing these the solutions into life. If you take few examples for that matter, let us take agriculture as a sector as an example, right. What you see is the building blocks that in the expo that mostly are of education focus, but nothing stops these building blocks to be used in healthcare or in agriculture or climate and so on and so forth. And the reason why it is happening is that the solutions are being designed and packaged so that they are use case agnostic, like a registry is a classic example that we take for granted. People try to do KYC and create same registry 100 times in each department in a state government as an example, as a beneficiary. Can the infrastructure from the government point of view, when they build as a policy maker, create that one registry which is authentic and open up those APIs, KYC APIs that we talk about, so that the ecosystem like yours can leverage that to add value added additional services to innovate, to reach out to various use cases across sectors is a classic example. Here is a good example. I just want to take a quick poll. From a payments point of view, we all are using FASTag. How many of you know today that you can directly pay to your vehicle using your FASTag ID as an identifier, the virtual address that Pramod was talking about? Just quick show of hands. Good. I think there's around 10-15 people out of the whole audience. That's the power of DPI basically. The productivity loss, that 60 years that I was talking about by standing in the lines, or even in the online ecosystem, you logging into your the issuer's bank and then going into the portal and then pushing the payment. One can directly use with the convenience by using just like sending an email message or a text message that we are so used to. In matter of seconds, one can recharge your the wallet of your tag. And that is where the innovation comes in, by using the principles of DPI, and where it opens those innovation capabilities with those minimalist principles that we talk about. We will go through this in a bit. The ecosystem's role comes in trying to imagine those possibilities using those underlying infrastructure that exist in each of these DPI through the DPGs and make it possible. So, most of the DPI principles revolve around these 5 core principles, and we did touch upon many of these in the previous segment. In the interest of time, I will not try to get into the details of each of this, but the key is leveraging those capabilities that the infrastructure enables. Interoperability is a good example in itself. The APIs, people talk of interoperability just APIs, it's not just that. It is more about trying to drive innovative use cases which are heterogeneous systems that are there across sectors and trying to bring them and providing that value added service to the end user is where the power of DPI comes in as an example. Minimalism is another classic example. You take any capability of a DPI from the previous slide, be it in registries or payments, doing what that block does best is what one has to look out for. So, from center point of view, what I would like to bring here is that the infrastructure that we have built and we are using as end users and now as builders that we are going to build, there is enough demand in the global south to start with, where to share these experiences out as packaged products out to the countries and then help millions of people that are out there to empower them to the same extent that we are all privileged to here. One good example is identity, which we take for granted. Identity in itself, many countries have that we interact with, like global South African countries that we are into and actively conversing with the policymakers. There are hundreds of friction points that policymakers create themselves for not and have reasons for not doing and opening up the capabilities for ecosystems to drive. Opening up an authentication API against a database. People look for picture perfect solutions that are required to solve for a given problem. So, what we do at center is try to connect the dots with the policymakers and create that fertile ground, so that they can imagine and ideate to do those +1 solutions that we talk about. Like many of the systems have, countries have any of these identities, payments, certificate databases that exist in some form or digital form. What we try to do is to bring that +1 thinking, opening up a digitally signed QR code to open up that non-linear adaptability of the capability of using that credential of an identity card or a student ID or a driving license, so that it can be used in a least friction way to avail any of these transactions as a use case. So, all of this is possible by applying those design principles, and the key of all this in a DPI thinking is about bringing the players, the government, the open source community, the ecosystem innovations, and then the supply side all coming together to solve for DPI. To solve for solutions that will enable the countries get that non-linear leap that we all saw as previous in the slides that Pramod talked about. So, in a nutshell, CDPI is trying to connect the DPGs, the digital public goods that you will get into more details in coming sessions. I think we have enough lineup of speakers going into each of those DPG solutions. But what I am trying to do here is trying to connect the interlink between the DPI and the DPG, the relationship, so that the innovation can be possible by leveraging those open source capabilities rather than reinventing the same thing again. One good example I have is that today when we want to build any solution, we do not go ahead and then start creating a MongoDB from scratch and design it from scratch. We just use it as an infrastructure and then build more meaningful value added real time here and now problem solutions to be solved using that. And that is exactly what these DPG building blocks that you will be going over to the rest of the day. You need to get that perspective in mind. How can you take that component and then try to curate a Lego block so that you can build a higher order solution using that. So, with that I would like to conclude and also give back some time, considering the lineup that we have interesting on DPGs, and can take any quick questions if there are any as such.
If you have any questions, please raise your hand. Anyone?
Hello. Okay, one sir. So my question is around, so when we are creating a new DPI, or if we intend to create a new DPI, like there can be others also who are trying to build. So I'm talking about the hospitality industry. So if I want to build a open hospitality, network, how do I connect with others who are trying to do it together? Like, is there a platform where I can kind of say that I'm trying to build this in?
So, this is where I think the government role comes handy, wherein the infrastructure, if you are building a house, you don't go and build road to your house. Basically, that's not what we do today, right? We rely upon the public infrastructure to build the road, and we go build our house and expect that infrastructure to be available, the water, utilities, road. To us, these building blocks that we talked about, the identity registries, the data sharing capabilities, or something that will have to be enabled as an infrastructure of registry of professionals, registry of facilities that exist in the country, so that you can leverage it to use it to provide transactions and value added services on top of that. So, that is where I think in the healthcare context, if you look, NHA, ABDM stack is doing that equivalent exactly what NPCI is doing for payments, right? Giving a registry of professionals, registry of facilities with the services that they can provide where they are. So, when you apply backend ONDC protocol layers on top of that, you can now start marrying these two to provide that discovery and fulfillment capability, supply demand matching, where if a patient is looking for a doctor in that area as an emergency, you can quickly, you can build those innovative apps to find that the right person at the right time to make a transaction. So, that is how the synergies between a public infrastructure utility that comes in, and then the private innovation through these applications, just like the payment apps in the payment world has created, can be replayed in across multiple sectors, not only healthcare. The same is getting replayed in agriculture to start with. The same building blocks are being used, creating a registry of farmers, land, crop that a farmer sown, so that they can empower the farmer with right credit at the right time. So, that is.
Hi Vijay. Could you touch upon the role CDPI is playing in terms of generating global demand for DPG-led solutions, and how that can create opportunities for entrepreneurs and the startup ecosystem?
So, CDPI has taken a very cautious role, like what we did last 15 years in the country by being on the side of the government, the right principles and right way to create these innovative infrastructure layers. So, we want to do same thing to the countries that we are advising and working closely with. So, our aim is to, our hope is to get the countries adapt DPGs or the open source solutions, but that is not what we are limited to as well. If a country is restricted for n number of factors, but they have the right intent to go out to its citizens, users, then we do not hesitate to work even with other non-licensed COTS, so on and so forth products as well. The idea is to get these principles and do the right policy, the market and the technology mix, marrying these three-leg stool with the right equilibrium is what our primary objective is, and we try to advise with the countries to that. And of course, there is a benefit of all countries have already seen and faced it in this last 15 plus years of vendor lock-in, and vendor lock-in is not proprietary systems are not bad. It is just that what we aim is that you have to have open interfaces is more important than what system that you use. Even if you run a proprietary system, if the APIs and the access to access that infrastructure is open with marketplace enabled, then that's it's a DPI in itself. Aadhaar is a classic example, like Pramod said. MOSIP is the open source, Aadhaar is not open source, but it is open in terms of people using it with an API, and then the policies around that well published, so that ecosystem can use under the law of the land, right. So, that is what we end up doing. And naturally, the DPGs will start aligning themselves out there, because there is no better way than getting the best of the solutions that are there in the open source.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you so much.
Great.
That was the end of the questionnaire session. Thank you so much, Vijay sir. A round
Thank
of
you all.
applause.